Usually when we think about saving the planet, we picture these massive high-tech solutions.
Right, yeah, like carbon capture machines the size of skyscrapers.
Exactly. Or, giant solar arrays covering entire deserts, lab-grown food. It's very engineered.
Yeah, I mean, we often try to invent our way out of a crisis. We kind of assume that because human industry created the problem, human industry has to uh, build the solution.
But what if the most advanced, perfectly calibrated survival technology on Earth isn't something we actually need to build?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Right. What if it's just been sitting there quietly operating in a state of absolute perfection for millennia?
And more importantly, what if our relentless drive to develop and improve it is the exact thing threatening our own existence?
Yeah, that is exactly the tension we are exploring today in the Pantanal.
Which is just a massive, unbelievable wetland.
It really is,
Yeah.
spanning Brazil, Bolivia, and Paraguay. And it defines almost everything we think we know about agriculture, conservation, and, well, survival.
Absolutely.
So we've put this custom-tailored deep dive together specifically for you, the listener, to look at this ecosystem through a really unique piece of source material.
Yeah, and it's not your standard scientific paper.
No, it's not. It's an excerpt from a book called The Heart of the Pantanal and the Spirit of Nature, which is actually drawn from the autobiography of Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
It is a really fascinating document to dive into because, it approaches ecological preservation from an angle we rarely see in standard policy literature.
Right.
It frames this region not just as a biological hotspot, but as this Edenic remnant of creation. And the account argues that understanding the mechanics of the specific place holds the absolute key to humanity's survival.
And he does not mince words about the stakes either. He lays out what he calls the three greatest challenges of modern society.
The big three.
Yeah. Solving pollution, creating a consciousness for protecting the environment, and increasing food production.
Which are all incredibly urgent.
Exactly. He states bluntly that if we neglect any one of these, humanity will just go extinct. He argues our endless greed for material things is destroying the air, the water, the ozone layer.
It's a pretty dire warning.
Very. But it sets up exactly why the Pantanal is so critical.
Right, because he points out that if our present trends continue, humanity is going to find itself destroyed by the very traps of the material civilization we've built.
We're engineering our own demise.
Exactly, and
Okay.
that's the backdrop for his 20-year effort to sustain and preserve the Pantanal.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because his account describes the Pantanal as the lungs of the world and nature's sponge.
Nature's sponge, I love that.
Yeah, it produces a massive amount of the Earth's oxygen and acts as a vital storehouse for greenhouse gases. So for you listening, this isn't just a pretty nature reserve that you visit on vacation.
No, not at all.
It's literally a piece of global infrastructure.
It really is. I mean, when he calls it nature's sponge, we have to think about the physical mechanics of a wetland. It physically absorbs this massive influx of water during the rainy season and then slowly releases it during the dry season.
It's regulating everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It prevents catastrophic flooding downstream and maintains water levels during droughts. It essentially regulates the heartbeat of the continent.
Wow.
Yeah, the Pantanal is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but honestly, even that designation feels a bit clinical for what he actually experienced down there.
Right, because his autobiography presents the Pantanal as a place where the flora and fauna exist exactly as they did at the time of creation.
Untouched.
Totally untouched. It is described as this magnificent harmony of sea, land, animals, and plants. I mean, humanity has destroyed so much of the natural world, right?
Oh, definitely.
Driving countless species to extinction just to build strip malls and factories. But here, the original forms remain completely intact.
And to really understand why this place is so vital, we first have to look at its staggering, almost unbelievable abundance.
The scale is just crazy.
Yeah, it is. We're talking about physical resilience and an explosive density of life that challenges our basic assumptions about how hard it is to survive on this planet.
And it's not just the fauna that exhibits this raw, self-sustaining power. Let's look at the sheer kinetic energy of the ecosystem.
A fish, right.
Yes. His account notes there are some 3,600 species of fish living in the Pantanal.
3,600.
3,600. Just to give you some context, the entire continent of North America has something like 1,000 freshwater fish species.
That is wild.
And this is just one wetland.
That level of biodiversity crammed into one interconnected region is just staggering. It creates a hyper-competitive, hyper-nutrient-dense environment.
And you can see the result of that environment in the vitality of the life there. Moon recalls this amazing anecdote about hooking a gold-colored fish called a dorado.
Oh, right, the Dorado.
Yeah, he says these things weigh upwards of 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And when this fish took the hook, he wrote that it felt like his entire body was being sucked into the river.
Which is just an incredible amount of force.
Wait, I have to pause here. I mean, I've been fishing.
Right.
A 40-pound fish is a fight, sure, but it doesn't suck a grown man into a river. Why is this specific fish so uniquely powerful?
Well, think about the mechanics of the environment it evolved in. This isn't some sluggish, overfished pond, you know?
Okay, fair.
In an ecosystem with 3,600 competing species, a top predator like the Dorado evolves to be pure, dense muscle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it has to navigate complex root systems, changing water levels, and constant competition. It is essentially a biological torpedo powered by an unpolluted, nutrient-rich diet.
That makes a lot of sense. He was reeling the line in with all his strength. The fish is jumping out of the water over and over, and it still had plenty of strength to fight.
Just relentless.
Yeah, he noted it felt more like fighting a bear or a tiger than a fish.
That's a great image.
And if the Dorado shows how much kinetic energy the ecosystem supports, the agriculture shows how much caloric energy it produces with literally zero human intervention.
Right, the contrast between the Pantanal's natural yield and modern agriculture is just mind-bending.
It really is. It's like a perpetual motion machine of agriculture. The riverbanks are just overflowing with pineapples, banana trees, and mango trees.
Just growing wild.
Growing completely wild. But here's the part that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. He writes that the soil is so rich, you can get 3 harvests of rice a year.
3 harvests.
Yeah. And get this, that is without irrigated fields. For crops like beans and corn, you literally just toss the seeds on the ground.
It requires no heavy machinery, no massive human labor. What's fascinating here is how he uses these examples of extreme abundance to argue against short-sighted economic development.
Like, why ruin it, right?
Exactly. The wetlands provide plenty of economic benefit simply by existing exactly as they are.
But hang on, 3 harvests without irrigated fields? That sounds almost biologically impossible.
It does sound like magic, yeah.
I mean, modern farming requires massive centralized water management just to guarantee one good yield. How is the soil pulling that off entirely on its own?
Well, it comes back to that sponge mechanism we talked about earlier.
Right, the seasonal flooding.
Yeah. The Pantanal operates on an extreme flood pulse cycle. During the wet season, the rivers overflow, covering the land and depositing a massive layer of nutrient-rich sediment and organic matter.
Like a natural fertilizer.
Exactly. When the water recedes, it leaves behind perfectly fertilized, deeply saturated soil. It is naturally doing the job of modern irrigation and chemical fertilization, but perfectly, year after year.
And the sweet potato story in his autobiography perfectly captures this effortless yield.
Oh, this is a great story.
He describes traveling down the Paraguay River on a boat and stopping at a local house near the bank. The farmer living there realized his guests were hungry, so he just casually walked over to his field and dug up a sweet potato.
But not just any potato.
No, he pulled up a sweet potato the size of a watermelon.
A watermelon-sized potato. And the most crucial detail of that anecdote isn't just the size of it, but the farmer's methodology.
Right. The farmer explained that as long as he leaves the root in the ground, it will continue to produce these massive potatoes for several years.
No annual tilling, no replanting.
Nothing. Next time you are standing in the produce aisle, holding a sad, plastic-wrapped sweet potato that is going to rot in 3 days, think about that.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does. Modern farming is like constantly spending down your savings account, buying chemical fertilizer to make up the deficit. But this farmer in the Pantanal is just living off the interest.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
The principle? The root stays securely in the ground, compounding year after year.
It is a profound difference in energy expenditure. We pour billions of dollars into genetic modification and massive infrastructure just to force the earth to yield a fraction of what this wetland produces naturally.
He had the exact same realization. He wrote that seeing this gave him a strong desire to take these specific potatoes to countries where food is lacking.
Which is a noble thought.
Definitely. And the resilience isn't just in the food crops either. Look at the trees. His account describes virgin forests of ebony pine. Trees so massive a person cannot even wrap their arms around them.
And the cellular structure of that wood is incredibly unique.
Yes. The wood is so dense that it doesn't rot. He notes it is actually said to last longer than iron.
Longer than iron.
Yeah, there is this local claim from the natives that You could drive an iron spike straight into one of these trees, and the tree would just heal around it and keep living for more than 100 years.
That's amazing.
Why would an ecosystem evolve a tree to be that impenetrable?
Well, because in a wetland environment with hyperabundant insects, aggressive fungi, and constant saturating moisture, rot is your biggest enemy.
Well, that makes sense. It's constantly wet.
Exactly. To survive, the ebony pine utilizes the incredibly nutrient-dense soil to build a cellular structure so tight, so heavily fortified, that absolutely nothing can break it down. It is an evolutionary arms race, and the tree won.
So when you have 3,600 species of fish, hyperdense trees, and watermelon-sized potatoes all packed into one dense wetland, basic biology tells us this place should suffocate on its own biological waste.
You would think so, yes.
With that much explosive life dying and reproducing, how does this place not just turn into a choked, polluted, overgrown swamp? What is the mechanism keeping it clean?
That is the ultimate paradox of such dense ecosystems. Without a perfect built-in regulatory mechanism, they absolutely would suffocate on their own byproducts.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. The answer lies in the ecosystem acting as nature's self-cleaning engine.
The perfect symbiosis.
Exactly. It is a perfect symbiotic balance. His autobiography points out that the lakes in the Pantanal are always clean. It doesn't matter what biological matter gets put into the water, it quickly becomes pristine again.
And the mechanism doing the cleaning.
It's the fish.
This is where that massive biodiversity we discussed earlier stops being just a fun fact and becomes vital infrastructure.
Right. Because there are thousands of different species of fish, and each species has evolved to feed on something slightly different, they form this highly complex living filtration system.
They devour absolutely anything that dirties the water.
Yeah, it's like a biological Roomba system perfectly calibrated to every square inch of its environment. Their very act of feeding is the function that keeps the water pure.
And he offers a very specific, almost microscopic example of this closed-loop system with the water hyacinth.
Yes, the water hyacinth leaf. He observed that the backs of these specific leaves in the wetlands are entirely black with bugs.
Just completely covered.
Completely. And if those bugs were just left alone to multiply, the plant would be consumed and die. But there are specific fish in the water beneath them that have evolved to eat those exact bugs off the leaves.
It's so perfectly balanced.
It is. So the bugs get to live their life cycle, the fish get fed, and the hyacinth gets clean and survives.
It is a flawless mechanical loop of mutual survival. I mean, if the bugs die, the plant dies. If the plant dies, the fish die.
And he extracts a huge philosophical takeaway from observing this mechanism. He writes, "This is what nature is like. No creature lives for itself. Instead, they live for each other."
That's a really profound way to look at ecology.
It is a beautiful thought, but I have to push back a little here because it highlights a really stark contrast.
How so?
Well, the fish live to clean their environment and make it better. Humans, especially in our modern industrial era, seem to do the exact opposite. We live for our own sake, and we actively dirty our environment to do it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is precisely his core argument. Nature operates on an inherent principle of mutual benefit.
Right.
Every single organism, from the hyacinth bug to the 40-pound Dorado, serves a purpose that sustains the whole. He observes that it is only human selfishness and our endless competition for the shortest route to economic success that disrupts this self-cleaning engine.
We are the anomaly in the system.
We really are. We break the loop.
Okay, I get that the ecosystem cleans itself beautifully. But how does that scale? If human industry starts encroaching on the Pantanal, a few bug-eating fish aren't going to stop a bulldozer.
Unfortunately, no.
He warns that because the Pantanal is now widely known as a treasure trove, it is about to become a battlefield for greedy humans. So does he actually propose a practical countermeasure to stop humanity from just paving over Eden?
He does, actually. He outlines a very comprehensive two-pronged approach.
Okay, what's the first prong?
On the logistical side, he details his own 20-year effort, bringing global leaders, environmental experts, and scholars from around the world directly to the Pantanal to sponsor discussions on how to protect it.
But why physically bring them there, though? Why not just send them a white paper with all the data about the water hyacinths?
Because reading a broadsheet about biodiversity doesn't change a politician's mind.
That's a fair point.
Seeing a massive ebony pine that outlives iron, or watching a 40-pound Dorado fight like a tiger, forces a shift in perspective. You have to physically show leaders the living alternative to the industrial mindset.
That makes a lot of sense. And while he was doing that high-level policy work, he also proposed very practical, localized solutions to interface with the wild without destroying it.
About the localized fish farms.
Right. He argues that no matter how many millions of fish there are, if people are given total freedom to just extract commercially from the wild rivers, the population will eventually crash.
It's inevitable.
So, the solution is to build specific, highly managed fish farms right alongside the natural ecosystem. And not just for fish, he advocates for bird atriums and insect preserves.
Notice the interconnected thinking there. He is mimicking the closed loop of the wild. He notes that raising insects helps increase the bird population.
Wait, how does raising insects in a preserve protect the wild Pantanal?
By creating a buffer zone?
Oh, I see.
You can't just save the wild birds. You have to ensure they have food that isn't being depleted by human interference. By deliberately increasing the populations of these creatures in controlled environments, like feeding the birds with raised insects or farming fish in adjacent waters, humans can satisfy their caloric and economic needs without touching the primary savings account of the wild river.
So you enjoy the resources without depleting the original pristine stock.
Exactly. It's a very pragmatic approach.
But his account goes much deeper than just buffer zones and infrastructure.
Yeah.
And this is where we see a profoundly philosophical and specifically spiritual solution to the environmental crisis.
Right.
Now, it's important to note the lens we're looking through today. Reverend Moon is writing this not as an environmental scientist, but as a religious leader.
A very crucial distinction.
Yeah. And while we're looking at this strictly to understand his framework, we are not endorsing the theology itself. His spiritual lens provides a really disruptive way to look at the mechanics of conservation.
It absolutely does. This raises an important question because his framework suggests that policy, economics, and even scientific data are ultimately insufficient on their own.
They aren't enough to save us.
Exactly. Again, while we aren't endorsing the religious viewpoints, his framework offers a fascinating paradigm shift. He argues that while many environmental groups have sprung up, the absolute best environmental movement is one that spreads love.
Because people protect what they love.
Simply put, yes.
So what does this all mean? He argues that the root cause of our ecological collapse is that humanity simply doesn't love the natural environment anymore, but is relying on an emotional connection, what he calls developing a heart that loves nature. Really a realistic strategy against merciless, multi-billion-dollar industrial development.
If you look at the mechanics of human behavior, it might be the only realistic strategy.
Really.
Think about it. If you view a virgin forest merely as a carbon sink or a future lumberyard, you will eventually calculate a price at which it is worth destroying. The math will eventually justify the bulldozers.
Because it's just a commodity. Everything has a price.
Exactly. But the religious framework presented here is that nature is a divine creation, a gift meant to be cherished, not used once and thrown away.
Right.
He challenges religious people specifically to lead the way in awakening the world to this preciousness. Because if holding a tree moves you to tears, because you view it as a sacred object of love, you will never cut it down.
You just wouldn't do it.
You cannot commodify something you truly deeply love. No amount of money buys it.
It is a complete inversion of how environmentalism is usually pitched to us.
It really is.
Usually it's pitched as a terrifying, data-driven obligation,
Yeah.
like reduce your carbon footprint or we all burn.
All doom and gloom.
Yeah. But his account is pitching conservation as an act of profound, joyful love. He writes that the shortcut to protecting nature is developing a heart that loves it.
A heart that loves nature.
He says we must be able to shed a tear at the sight of a simple blade of grass. We must be able to grab hold of a tree and weep, understanding that something profound and divine is hidden inside a single boulder or a gust of wind.
Policy fails when it feels like a restriction. It succeeds when it is a natural byproduct of what a culture actually values.
Yeah, it is so true. And that brings us right to the heart of what we want you, the listener, to take away from this custom deep dive today.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We have zoomed way out. We've looked at millions of acres of wetlands in South America, giant fish pulling like tigers, and massive ancient trees that deflect iron spikes.
A macro view.
But the source material asks us to zoom all the way back in. How does this interconnected, deeply emotional view change how you look at the mundane nature right outside your front door?
Yeah, how do you view the bugs on the leaves in your own neighborhood?
Because if the mechanics of the Pantanal teach us anything, it is that there is no mundane nature.
None at all.
Every single insect, every root system, every drop of rain is part of a highly complex living engine that sustains your life.
It's all connected.
And his autobiography leaves us with this incredibly poetic, lingering image. It says that if we can truly open our spiritual eyes and understand our connection to this self-cleaning engine, we will see that a single dandelion growing out of a crack by the roadside is more valuable than the gold crowns of kings.
What a beautiful way to frame it. Which leaves us with a final, rather challenging thought to mull over today.
Yeah.
His entire framework hinges on the idea that we only protect what we love, and we can only love what we intimately connect with.
Right.
So as we navigate an increasingly digital, screen-focused era, a world where we are physically more disconnected from the dirt, the water, and the wildlife than any generation before us, how do we develop that deep, terror-inducing love required to save our environment?
That's the real challenge.
Can humanity truly love and therefore protect a world it increasingly only experiences through the flat glass of a screen?